Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the Rose Bowl. It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait for that game. One of the biggest games of the year in the regular season. Have to imagine it's going to be absolutely incredible in the postseason as well. But let's move forward to that night slate. Let's move forward to what I tend to believe is the weirdest, most unpredictable game that we have in these quarterfinals, and it is Notre Dame against Georgia because you got the biggest question on the board. It is Gunnar Stockton. How does he react? How does he play? Is he comfortable in this system? Is he not? How does Notre Dame attack him? A million questions around number 14 for Georgia. But at the end of the day, for Notre Dame, this is a message sender game. This is the game where you show everyone that I understand Georgia's on a backup. I get this might not be the Georgia team of usual. You still get to say you beat Georgia. You still get to say you walked into New Orleans, beat Georgia, and moved on to a game against Penn State or Boise State that you could very well win. It's going to be a really, really fun battle between these two teams, and if Notre Dame wins it, then could be kind of the sign of a new time around there in South Bend. But the biggest thing you're going to want to talk about here outside of Gunnar Stockton, and we'll get to that here in a second, but the Notre Dame run game is going to be a huge challenge for this UGA defense. I mean, Georgia Tech went for 300 yards, and Haynes King kind of led the way in most respects, and that's kind of the interesting thing about this one. The Notre Dame offense utilizes a ton of quarterback run with Rylie Leonard, and that has kind of been an issue for Georgia throughout this year. The big-time question is, can he keep them honest with his arm? Because the reality is, a lot of those quarterbacks that they played, Jalen Milroe, Haynes King, Jackson Dart even, that had some success on the ground, they were able to throw the ball around. They were able to make those DBs be a little bit more nervous about that deep ball down the middle of the field than maybe Rylie Leonard can. Now, I'm not saying Rylie Leonard can't do that. He's just going to have to start the game hitting a couple of balls, beyond 10 yards, making sure that those DBs for Georgia really respect his arm, and then that run game can really take over. And on the other side, you have the toughest group you're going to ever have to deal with if you're Notre Dame. Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, Christian Miller, they are bigger than just about any player that you have had to move if you're the Notre Dame offensive line. So they've been incredible all year, that Notre Dame offensive line. They got to win a battle that is going to be the toughest battle they've had to win all year. There's no doubt about that. And then this guy right here, Rylie Leonard, he holds the keys. If Notre Dame is going to get past this game, if they're going to get past the next game, if they're going to win a national title, it comes down to number 13. Can he make all the throws that he's going to have to make throughout this game and throughout the next couple of games if they're going to be able to win this one? Because let's be totally honest, Kirby Smart's going to be ready to roll in this game. Those defensive players are going to be ready to roll in this game, which means Rylie Leonard's probably going to have to play the best game that he's played all year, the cleanest game he's played all year, and it's going to be a load for him to deal with. There's no doubt about that. But getting to the man of the hour, Gunnar Stockton, the guy that everyone has questions about going forward. And the biggest thing here is Gunnar Stockton is the question. I'm not sure he's the answer. I think the answer is just about everyone else. UGA has struggled with drops, miscommunication, blitzes, all of the different things you can possibly struggle with offensively. They've struggled with at different times throughout the season, and it's really kind of hurt Carson Beck at different times this season, especially during that month. There were a lot of drops, there were a lot of miscommunication, there was a lot of stuff that forced Carson Beck to be a little bit more forceful with the ball, be a little bit more pushing it into windows that might be a little bit too tight. That put them in bad situations. So everyone else got to pick up the slack. It's got to be Arian Smith not dropping any balls. It's got to be even the defensive side of the ball making better plays throughout this game and slowing down that run game. It has to be the tight ends making sure that they're blocking really, really well, pass protecting at an elite level. Everyone else just has to pick up that little bit of slack because as good as Gunnar Stockton is, as talented as he is, and as good as I think he will be in this game, the reality is he's going to need help from everyone else. And it really does come down to Mike Bobo more than anything else. Indiana in that game didn't necessarily do a ton to help Curtis Rourke. They didn't necessarily help out the wide receivers and Curtis Rourke against that incredibly good back end with Xavier Watts, with Christian Gray, with all of those very talented guys. You have to help out your quarterback, especially in this situation. So Mike Bobo has to scheme guys open one way or the other, whether that's mesh concepts or that's leaking a running back out of the backfield or it's using different screens and different things of that nature. You have to find a way to get this guy going. You have to find a way to get this guy open receivers, or it's going to be a really ugly day. It's going to get away from him in a hurry, and then you're going to look up in the fourth quarter and you're going to be down 21. You're going to have a first start quarterback trying to lead you back. So it's going to be a lot of different things kind of going into this game. But when you talk about some of the bigger storylines as you head in, a lot of them are injury based, and the biggest one outside of Carson Beck, of course, is Rylie Mills. Rylie Mills is the sack leader for this Irish team, the anchor on the interior of that defensive line. He is a problem to deal with. One way or the other, he is going to be he would have been a huge player in this game. So everyone else has got to pick up the slack. Howard Cross has got to be huge. He's been a little bit dinged up. He played with a boot, played with a brace in that Indiana game. You have Donovan Hinnish. You have Joshua Barnum. You have very talented players on the interior. They're all going to have to play better football than they've played all year. There's no doubt about that, and both these coaches are going to have their hands full, one way or the other. Marcus Freeman has to make sure that he's ready for pretty much anything that could be thrown at him. You know, when you have a backup quarterback, when you know you're a little bit underhanded offensively if you're Georgia, you attack in different ways. You attack in a little bit weird ways, and sometimes that includes some trick plays. Sometimes that includes some things that you haven't seen from Georgia all year. The quarterback run game will be a big part of this. So Marcus Freeman's going to have his hands full, and then Kirby Smart's always going to have his hands full. There's no doubt about that. When you have a run game like they have over there at Notre Dame, and even on the offensive side of the ball, you have to make sure that Gunnar Stockton is ready to go. Mike Bobo will call plays. Mike Bobo will handle that part of it. But at the end of the day, you're the guy that has to give him all the confidence in the world. You're the guy that has to put him in a situation to succeed, and you're the guy that has to make sure that defense is helping him out along the way. So if Georgia wins this one, I think it'll be because the rest of the team prove that they are title good. They'll prove that even with Gunnar Stockton out there, they are going to be able to pick up the slack. They are going to be able to make all the plays in the world. And then for Notre Dame, if they win, I think it's going to be Rylie Leonard proving that he is title good. I think it's going to be him proving that he can play against the elite defenses in the country and he can lead his team to a national title. So someone's leaving NOLA with a remarkably good shot to win the national title. Will it be Gunnar Stockton stepping up into the spotlight, or will Rylie Leonard and Notre Dame kind of steal the show from those remarkable team that's looking for 3 out of the last 4 titles? Players to watch in this one, Trevor Etienne's huge in this game because when you talk about the run defense for Notre Dame, one of the best in the entire country. Rylie Mills obviously hurts that a little bit, but as you go through some of the different games that they've played in, shout out to Brooks Austin for kind of breaking this down a little bit more in a little bit more detail for me. A lot of those linebackers play a little bit too aggressive at times. Sometimes they'll jump a little bit over a gap that's a little bit too aggressive. This is the guy that can totally take advantage of that. He can hit a jump cut very quickly, get back into the opposite B gap, and then fly down the field. He's a very, very dangerous running back, and if these linebackers like Jack Kaiser and those guys on the defensive side of the ball for Notre Dame over pursue at any point in this game, number one is going to make them pay. I can almost promise you that. And then C.J. Allen. He is huge in this game. He is that linebacker in the interior of the field. He is the guy that is going to be chasing down Jeremiah Love and chasing down Rylie Leonard and being the guy that kind of spies a little bit in this game throughout it. So he's huge. He's kind of that Swiss Army knife that they have at the linebacker position. And I think when you talk about all of the different things that you have to deal with for this Notre Dame offense, it comes down to that linebacker play. Him, Smile Mondon, Rylan, I'm forgetting his last name. Apologies. That linebacker group for Georgia is remarkably talented. I think C.J. Allen's going to have to lead the way in this one. Jordan Faison, he was huge in that game against Indiana, had over 100 yards, was kind of the answer to the prayer of what wide receiver is going to step up for Notre Dame. It was him that time around, and probably going to have to be him again. I don't necessarily know if they have a guy on that roster that's going to be really ready to go. I think they have guys that can make plays, and I think Mitchell Evans will be helping this out. I think Jaden Greathouse can make plays. I think Chris Mitchell can make plays. They need a guy to lead the way, and it seems like Jordan Faison's going to be that guy in the postseason. He's probably got to be that guy tomorrow. And then Howard Cross. We talked about it. Rylie Mills is not going to go in this game. That means number 56 is the most important player on that defense. Obviously, Xavier Watts will have plenty to say about this game. I'm not worried about number 0, but number 56 on the interior is going to be huge. He's going to have to slow down that rushing attack for Georgia. He's going to have to, at times, get after Gunnar Stockton and get him a little bit nervous, make him know that he's there, and then maybe you get a couple mistakes from the kid. He obviously played really well to start the game against Texas when he came in. Didn't necessarily play all that well down the stretch, and that was when Texas really could pin their ears back and kind of get after him. Howard Cross is going to be a huge part of Notre Dame being able to do that. And then you got keys to the game. If this D-line for Georgia can control this game, it might get over pretty quickly, because the reality is that's what we saw against Texas. We saw a D-line that absolutely dominated the game, that said, we have to pick up the slack against one of these elite teams. We're going to have to play really elite football, and they absolutely did in both those games. They're going to have to do it again in this one. Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, Rylie Leonard, it's a three-headed monster that's remarkably hard to deal with if you do not get push on the interior, if you're not able to handle the outside run for Rylie Leonard. So that D-line's got to control the day. It's got to be those edge rushers and Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams really controlling, and then Nazir Stackhouse needs to be able to hold his own against that offensive line. And then get Gunnar Stockton in a groove. One way or the other, you got to find a way to get him most comfortable in this game, whether that's running the ball a couple of times with him so he can get a couple of hits, really get himself kind of juiced up, or throwing a couple of screens, throwing some slants, throwing whatever makes him comfortable, and most importantly, making sure you're keeping the ball out of harm's way, making sure that you're putting the ball in the place that it absolutely needs to be, and making sure that you're giving Gunnar Stockton plenty of chances to go win this game for you. So, plenty talented kid. That's not going to be an issue for Gunnar Stockton. He's a very, very talented kid. You still got to give him some good chances. You still got to put him in chances to succeed, and especially early in this game, you're going to have to do that. And then everyone else picking up the slack. Without Carson Beck, the wide receivers have to play a little bit better. The offensive line has to play a little bit better. The running backs have to play a little bit better. And just for fun, the defense has to play just a little bit better as well. So you can't have any drops. You got to have great protection. You can't have a ton of penalties. You got to just make sure you play clean football, because at some point, this kid is probably going to make some type of mistake that Carson Beck wouldn't make. When everyone else picks up the slack, that doesn't seem to be quite as big of a problem as it could be. So it's going to be an awesome game for Georgia. And then for Notre Dame, get after Stockton. Just go after him pretty much from the jump. Obviously, missing Rylie Mills, your leading sack guy, is going to hurt in this game. There's no doubt about that. But you got to get after this kid. You got to make sure that he knows that you can get after him in this game, and a couple of mistakes will come for that. You have too talented of a back end to really have to worry too much about that the wide receivers for Georgia, at least from a talent perspective. If you can get after this quarterback, if you can make him know that you're there, it's going to be really, really hard for him to not make a couple of mistakes in this game. And then dynamic quarterback run game. It's been a huge part of this offense all year, and it's really hurt Georgia all year. And it's kind of a twofold thing. You can't just run the ball. You got to be able to keep them honest on the back end by being able to throw the ball past them. But at the end of the day, Rylie Leonard's going to be absolutely huge. And if they can force Gunnar Stockton to go punch for punch with Rylie Leonard, you're probably going to have to lean towards the more veteran presence in that one. So that's going to be a huge part of this game. If they can get him running downhill, if they can get that three-headed monster rolling, this Georgia defense is going to have their hands full pretty much all day. And then if you give Rylie Leonard time to process, he is going to be able to have success in this game. It's a very, very talented defense, probably the best that he's played all year, but when he's kept clean, 73% completion, 15 touchdowns, 5 picks. When he's under pressure, 42% completion, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. So Georgia's going to want to get after him. They're going to want to force those mistakes. Rylie Leonard and this offensive line just have to make sure that he is upright and ready to make all the plays in the world, because at some point he's going to have to make a big-time throw in this game over the middle of the field, past Malachi Starks, past a lot of these talented players. If they think that he can't make that throw, that run game's not going to be a big deal, and he's not going to be able to throw the ball into those windows very confidently. So it's going to be a battle. This is one that I think is probably the most unpredictable one of the bunch, because it has the most unpredictable player in the entire quarterfinals in Gunnar Stockton, but I'm betting on Kirby Smart. I'm going to bet that Kirby Smart has that defense ready to roll. I think Rylie Leonard's going to have a really tough time running the ball and possibly throwing the ball in this game. I think Gunnar Stockton will make just enough plays, and more importantly, I think those edge rushers for Georgia are going to be real problems for those tackles for Notre Dame. I think Georgia wins this one. I think they win a slugfest. I think it's going to be gross, but I'm going to pick Kirby Smart to get that win when he absolutely needs one. But going to be a remarkable game over there in New Orleans, a game that is just so hard to get a beat on. I'll be totally honest with you. I was going through this one trying to figure out which way I was going to go, and I think you just have to trust one guy over the other, and I'm going to trust Kirby Smart for the time being. I'm going to go down with the ship if I do, but at the end of the day, I think Notre Dame is very much alive in that game. I think they very much could win, and then they have a game against Penn State or Boise State that they would very much like their chances in. But we'll break it down in time. Obviously, we'll break down all of the reaction to that on Friday's show. But let's get to a little bit of a top 8 Tuesday. Let's break down the quarterbacks in these quarterfinals. I'll rank them from 8 to 1, break down all of the different things about them, and really tough group in the middle there to kind of break down. So we'll get to it right after this. Stick with us.